It's really important to do things like this, get together, meet other people, maybe going through something similar, and hopefully that you can maybe meet a new friend or find a new ally or meet a new person that can support you professionally along the way. Tonight we have Heidi. She will be presenting first. She's the divorce coach, and if you've never heard of a divorce coach, which I hadn't until a couple of years ago, it's very different than someone who does therapy for you. It's very different than your advisor, and it's very different than your lawyer, and it's really cool to learn about that and how that may or may not support you in your journey. Madison is with us. She's with Dunphy Best, and she's here in the law capacity, so very technical, very great speaker, so we're happy to have both of you back. Thank you very much. I'm the financial advisor. I know a few of you, not everybody, so I'm going to share a bit about that tonight. And then we have Cheryl, and she's here in the psychology realm, so counseling, coaching, legal, financial. It may not be everything, but it's quite a nice package to help you get through that process.
I'm Heidi. I'm going to stand. I remember last year I was feeling like I needed to move around a little bit. So I just want to quickly say thank you to Crystal and her team for envisioning this evening when we started last year, thinking about doing things and how it's all come together. So all of this is Crystal and her team, Janae, and the rest of the Holden Taylor group. So thank you for having us. This is a critical collaboration because I think that's a great place to start. When you are at any point along the journey of contemplating separation and divorce or experiencing separation and divorce or on the other side of it, it's not like it comes with a manual that flies out of the sky and you know exactly who to turn and what to do. In my own personal experience, that's how it wasn't my lifelong dream to become a divorce coach by any means, but having experienced my own crazy, nuanced, colorful divorce 12 years ago, it really highlighted the areas where there wasn't support. And so I set out to fix that problem. And so the profession of divorce coaching is emerging. In the US, it is much more common to hire a divorce coach. I do get hired by clients in the States who the first hire they make is a divorce coach. And it's happening around here. I've really curated my practice to ensure that I have knowledge and expertise to meet you wherever you are at all along the divorce continuum and help set the stage for what's about to happen no matter where you're at. And so what does your divorce coach do? Well, I like to think of myself, some people call me a divorce doula, some people call me a quarterback. It really depends on the client, maybe the gender, but the point is to have that ability to have someone think outside your emotions and look at everything from 30,000 feet and see the path forward as working with you from a coaching perspective. So it's really important to kind of have that person, and we all have friends and family, we all have support. Friends and family are amazing and they play a role. Friends and family also can only go so far. They're looking at your situation through their lens and their experience, maybe what they want for you. And sometimes that's not always helpful, and obviously most times it is. But to have that unbiased, non-judgmental thinking partner to help guide where you need to go all along the way is what a divorce coach does. So obviously, number one, ensure that you feel heard and understood and supported. So wherever you're at, I'm thinking about leaving my marriage. My marriage has just ended. I am in co-parenting, nightmarish hell. Sorry, can I say that? Yeah. And wherever it is, or I'm out the other side of my divorce and now I'm sitting here and what do I do? And so from start to finish, to have that person really by your side is critical. And then what it also allows is a window into the process, because again, it doesn't come with a manual. And so to understand what's ahead, what you need to think about, when you need to add in resources if you haven't already, and then how you approach those resources with the right information is also what your divorce coach, or at least what I do to help my clients. And that first meeting with your lawyer may not be the first call you make. It may be to me to kind of go, okay, let's sort through all of the emotions of this. Let's think about where you're at logistically, how many kids you have, what life looks like. Then let's think about the process, and let's introduce you to counsel, and let's set the stage with counsel so that you're not spinning your wheels and wasting time and energy and money and resources trying to figure out what you need to say. Now, obviously, lawyers have amazing detailed questionnaires that get you through that, but sometimes just to have that person beside you to guide, again, help you manage your emotions, understand the process. Sometimes I talk outside the legal sphere so that we can apply what the expertise is into your real life and look at the options that way. So again, we think together. We establish the way forward for you. It's not stuffing you into a framework. It's really, okay, let's learn about your life and what's actually possible. Where are you stuck? What's not possible? Where are the obstacles? What are the concerns? What are some concerns with your children if you have them? What are some concerns about perhaps your soon-to-be ex's behavior or personality, or what you're actually dealing with? And we can obviously tackle everything with clarity because I'm clear. I'm not living what you've lived. I've lived it, so I see it, I understand it, and I feel it, and I empathize, but I'm not living what you're living, so I can see clearly what needs to happen. And sometimes we'll be working together just to calm the emotions and calm your anxieties and just be able to maybe even take a shower that day and break things down and be able to move forward. Or we might be getting organized for a meeting with your lawyer or your financial planner. Or I say often, take that, and I think that needs to go to your counselor or psychologist or therapist, because that needs to be dug into with that professional lens, and that's not where I work. I like to say, and I was saying this earlier, your therapist is going to work backwards in the why and the how and who you are and what needs to happen. I'm there to guide you forward. Okay? I'm so not down, right? Yes. Okay. So beyond the divorce and you, there are lots of other elements that we have to manage, and parenting and communications are also critical areas that need to be thought about. So I help establish some goals if it's with you as an individual, or it's a situation which is sometimes unique, but it is possible and does happen with your co-parent, and we establish some goals. We establish how we want things to go in the separation and divorce. We establish kind of some places we want to come back to when it gets bumpy or we get lost or there's conflict. A lot of times that's not possible. So then we do it together. How do we set some goals to come back to know what the long game is so we don't get caught up in the short game? Obviously, my biggest goal with clients is to mitigate unnecessary conflict, unnecessary spending, unnecessary letters back and forth, unnecessary work, and get you to the place that needs to be when you're dealing with an acute situation or a long-term situation. So how do we diffuse that conflict? And oftentimes what I'm finding is I'm in a situation, as we're talking about the process and separating and things get heated and there's communications and the emails are firing and the texts are firing and you're getting midnight nastygrams, which I used to get all the time, and you don't know where to turn, or it's just sent you for a tailspin, or your friend says, I really want to help you, but I can't. That communication can either be filtered through me, and I read and give you the information only that you need to know. I often will communicate on your behalf, obviously in consult with you, but protecting you from some of the high conflict noise that comes out of separation and divorce. And also help you, if you're doing the communicating, help you think through what needs to be said or not said, just so you stay aligned with your goals, operate close to your integrity, and make sure that you're thinking of all when you're responding or not responding. It's a really hard place to be. And, having a specialized, unique service to offer that is, again, something that I really needed. So I'll think back to where those gaps were, and that was one. I remember getting the midnight nastygram and being completely upside down and calling a friend. And yeah, she said, you know what, I love you. I can't help you. And that's true. And she shouldn't, because she's not a professional in addiction, personality disorders, and all that I was dealing with, right? So you need that person that can filter for you and also keep you aligned with your goals, even though you want to tell them lots of colorful things in that moment. And okay, what if we've got parent? Okay, good. Okay, and so from a parenting perspective, so we've got you and the situation, then we've got communication, how things shift with your soon-to-be, if not ex, and then from a parenting perspective, how do you either operate on your own as a parent that has to manage kids that have their own feelings about the situation, or work with your co-parent? That's always, again, unique and very special, often not possible. But how do you actually look at your children and what they need in order to be able to get through the divorce and separation at their age-appropriate age and stage with information that they need or not need, and be okay? And so I spend lots of time with parents at that phase of the process, coaching from a communications perspective on the words and the articulation and what kids actually need in those moments, because they have their own feelings about it. They're not the same as ours. So, today I had a client that I literally was like, okay, I want you to come out of your 44-year-old bucket, okay, say goodbye to your Sauvignon Blanc and your workout shoes and all of your work, and let's go into your 6-year-old's bucket. What do you see? Well, I see the unicorn that we talked about, that he's worried that's not going back and forth. What else do you see? What's right in front of you? So we need to share with him what's right in front of him, what he needs to know to make him feel safe, to make him feel loved unconditionally all the time, and to feel a sense of belonging in the family, no matter what's happening between the parents. And so that kind of notion of parenting through divorce is the way that I do it, is making sure that divorce isn't a dirty word. It's not a bad thing. Relationships change, relationships evolve, people change, sometimes on the same pace, sometimes not. Sometimes we discover things about people that end the marriage, and that's between you. And it's okay for your child to learn that you're not going to compromise yourself. Relationship has evolved and changed, and it needs to find the place that it can operate. Marriage isn't it anymore, and that's okay. And that takes the shame out of it. There's 50% of the population that has divorced parents, so that's a lot of kids. So we want them to feel as little shame, and the impact on the kids, of course, is already what their experience should be in that 6-year-old bucket that you're supporting. Sometimes it's really hard when you're dealing with your own stuff. I have been there. I had 2 young daughters at the time that I had to really put that smile on my face. But I also gave myself permission to be human, and they gave me permission to be human too. And there was a lot of learning in that, and that's what I want to impart on my clients too. It's okay for kids to see you upset. You're human. As much as I think we all got our capes when our kids were born, we are human, and we are allowed to be human. We're not superhuman. We can feel our feelings too. And I think those are kind of the areas of growth that I work with my clients on to make sure that they're moving forward as their family unit and ecosystem shifts. And that's the way that we look at divorce. So other things, what else comes? These are all the areas outside of the actual divorce that come my way, deciding to stay or go. And that's the foundation of coaching, and that's what I do really love about the coaching aspect of my training and my work, is allowing people to self-discover and supporting them all along the way of that. I can't answer the question for you, but I certainly can help you get to the answer that you need. How you tell your spouse, again, setting the stage, the time, the plan, the words, and what comes next. And that's where oftentimes there might be an opportunity to bring a lawyer in sooner, depending on the situation, to educate yourself and understand before you make any of those moves. And so we look at the whole situation from 30,000 feet and make those decisions. How to talk to the kids, again. How does that look in your family? What's doable, what's possible, what's not? Can you collaborate and do it together? How old are they? What makes sense to tell them? What you never tell kids. What are the 5 biggest mistakes parents make? Saying too much is one. How do you do that without imparting your feelings on them? Are you ready to do it? All those kinds of things. So we set that stage too. I have scripts on my website, and I think there's notes for scripts that people, so anyway, we can talk later, but I have a course on my website about how to talk to your kids about divorce, and because I saw that as a critical gap, again, that more than my voice can offer, so I offer it as a course as well. And then, of course, transitioning to your new normal, that's all part of coaching. What does that look like for you? What have you not been able to do in your life? What do you not understand about yourself? What does life look like? What do you want out of life? What do you want to step away from that's been imposed on you and step towards for yourself? And it's such an opportunity of growth. And that's my favorite part of the work that we do. And then I've been doing this long enough that I've got clients coming back saying, guess what? I'm getting married and we're moving in, or we are thinking about it. What do? We knew we needed to talk to you first. And I often will help clients and their new partners decide the when and the how, if at all, at that time. I had a client today that we decided the when and the how was just off the table because of where one of their children was at. And that's okay. And that's kind of the new perspective on separation and divorce and coming out of what we do and then looking at life going, okay, now I actually get to paint the picture of what I want it to look like. So that's it in a nutshell. And then translating it back to these beautiful people, always adding in the professionals that you need at the right time. And we'll get into it pretty quickly, but there's always so many questions about the system and the processes. And do I go to mediation? Do I hire a lawyer? Do I do this? Do I do that? And it's very important to educate yourself on what is right in terms of the steps you take so that you can follow. Yes, it costs money. Everything in life costs money. There is an efficiency we can build in, but you need the advice of the professionals involved in divorce in order to move forward effectively. Oftentimes the other side will be like, no, let's just negotiate together. I got it. I'll do all the work. Don't worry. Or, let's just go to a mediator. No, one of those I don't know, I found Good Times Divorce. I think they're great. And, all in all good notions, all good intentions. Oftentimes that doesn't result in what is fair, reasonable, and equitable. And oftentimes that is a tool to drag out the process. And the mediator does not make the decisions. And so going in with your eyes wide open, educate yourself. That's where setting up with a divorce coach that can allow you to understand the players that need to come in. And no, we're not working together under the table. I literally only refer to these 3 professionals in those buckets. I have a very small amount of humans that I refer to because they have to, again, be an extension of what I'm doing from a care perspective and a brand perspective and an education perspective. And so you want to educate yourself, you want to understand, and what you hear out there is not always the case. Come to the professionals and always seek legal advice. I always say to my kids, don't say always and never, but always seek legal advice. Never listen to someone who thinks they know the answers, who doesn't. And always seek financial advice. Mm-hmm. And when someone is there to offer therapy and someone may say, you know what, I think it's time, it's the best thing you can do for yourself and for your kids.
Hi everyone, my name's Madison Brush. I'm with the law firm of DBB, Dunphy Best Bloxham. I've been practicing exclusively in family law since 2016. And I'm going to walk through very high level what the law looks like in Alberta. I say in Alberta because every province has different laws when it comes to property division. So if you are going down a road of Googling things, make sure you put the word Alberta in there because the laws are different. Okay, so let's talk about what my job actually is. As a divorce lawyer, I think there is some blending sometimes between legal advice and listening and hearing what a client has to say. But at the end of the day, I am not a trained professional when it comes to your mental health, your psychological well-being. The best I can do is say, I think you need to go see someone. So when you're coming to me, I can identify things. I've seen a lot of situations, but my job is to guide you through the legal side of this. And it is a transaction, and the more you can view it as a business transaction at the end of the day, the more smoothly it's going to go for you at the end. Okay, I think we've covered this one. All right, so let's start with talking about property division. So one of the biggest questions I get when someone walks into my office is, what am I entitled to? The house isn't in my name. I've been home for the last 15 years. I don't have any RSPs. The last time I went to work was when I was teaching right before I had 3 kids. And I have a pension that's got about $20,000 in it, and that's it. So I have nothing coming out of this. And I say, okay, do you own a house? Yes. What does your partner have in RSPs? What does your husband have in RSPs? And the answer is, they have this, they have that. And I say, great, you're entitled to half of it. When you are married to someone, it does not matter whether the assets are held in joint names, your name or his name or her name. At the end of the day, if that asset was acquired during the course of the marriage, it is a divisible asset, and that asset will be divided equally by a court or by an arbitrator if you can't settle it outside of those processes. There are a few assets that are not equally divided, and what those are inheritance, gifts from third parties, and insurance proceeds that are paid out as a result of a personal injury claim. And those remain the separate property of the party who received those, unless that party puts it into the joint pot. And so if you are in a situation where you have received inheritance, received a gift from your parents, or you have received an insurance proceed payout, you should be thinking very carefully about what you're doing with that money. And if someone came to see me on that, I would say put that into an account in your own name and don't use it to pay off your mortgage. That is the absolute worst thing you could do with it, because when you do that, you've taken that exempt asset and you've just toddled it straight into a family pot. And at that point, it's been commingled, and there's a different legal analysis that goes into it, and you might have diluted that exempt property. Let's talk about parenting. So when we talk about parenting, people come into my office and say, I want sole custody. And I say, what does that mean to you? And they say, I want my child to live with me 100% of the time. And I say, okay, that's not custody. Custody, which is now more commonly known as decision-making, is the bundle of rights and responsibilities that you have with respect to making decisions for your child or children. So that is, where do they go to school? Do they get vaccinated? That's been a fun topic over the last few years. What religion are they raised in? Do they get to play hockey or basketball or dance or whatever that looks like? Do they get to travel outside of Canada? Those are decisions that you only get to make with your spouse. You are presumed to have decision-making that is shared when you separate from your spouse. There are certain situations where you can get sole decision-making. And in those situations, you then become the driver. And you get to make those decisions on your own. But it's pretty unique for that to occur, especially in the first stages of a separation and divorce. So let's talk about parenting time, because that's different than decision-making. So decision-making, you are sharing that with your co-parent. Parenting time is the time that a child spends in each parent's household. And that can be shared week on, week off. That can be, I live with mom primarily and I see dad on the set schedule, or vice versa. And that is something that you will decide in discussions with your lawyer, your divorce coach, and potentially a counselor when you're looking as to what is in my child's best interest. And the only test and the only factors that are looked at when we're deciding where a child will sleep each night is what is in that child's best interest. So just because you don't like dad, but the court sees dad as a capable parent, that child is probably going to spend a significant amount of time, up to 50% with dad, and vice versa. And so a lot of times what I hear people saying when they come into my office is, he says he'll take the kids away. It's probably not going to happen. I'd go so far as to say it's not going to happen because the courts in Alberta just don't treat parenting that way. And, you know, at the end of the day, if that is the fear and that is the concern that's keeping you in a relationship with someone, it shouldn't be. And that's a really good time to spend an hour with a lawyer to have a conversation as to what parenting looks like and what co-parenting looks like in a separation and in a divorce. Let's talk about child support. It's a fun one.
Always a fun one.
Okay, so before I jump into this, there is an online calculator. You do not need to see a lawyer to see what type of child support you would be entitled to. And I think it's really important for people to hear that, because sometimes that can be a decision that changes whether people want to stay or go. That online calculator, you Google Federal Child Support Guideline Calculator, pops up, first search on Google. So feel free to do that at any point in time. You might want to put your settings on private. So let's talk about child support. So there's really two primary types of child support. The first is called Section 3 child support. And we call it that because that's the section of the legislation that it falls under. Section 3 child support is what every single person in this room is thinking about when I say the words child support. It is a monthly payment made from the spouse that does not have the children in their care to the spouse that has the children in their care. That amount is set by the federal child support guidelines. What that means is if you have a spouse who makes $80,000 a year and you have 2 children, if you plug those 2 things into the calculator, it will spit out a number, and that is what you are entitled to every single month. There is no negotiation on that. The other type of child support is Section 7 child support. Section 7 child support is over and above Section 3 child support. And what that child support looks at is the extra needs of the child. So that is childcare expenses. That would be your tutoring. That would be your orthodontics and braces, dentistry. What else? Sports.
Psychology.
Psychology, and post-secondary education. And those are shared in proportion to your income. And so what that looks like is if you make 30% of the overall income between the 2 parents, you pay 30% of that expense, and the other party pays 70%. Those numbers, with respect to both Section 3 and Section 7 support, are adjusted every single year once you get your tax return. So what that means is if you get an increase in your salary or he gets an increase in his salary, then the child support will go up based on that increase in a salary. So you're always going to have your children receiving the benefit of any parental increase in income. One important piece to note on that, actually. If you are in shared parenting, you are paying child support and they are paying child support. And so what that looks like is the Section 3 child support that they are to pay to you, they pay to you. And then we look at what your income is and how many kids you have in their care, and we swap that. And so that's where there's money flowing between both households every single month. Oh, there you go. Okay, spousal support. This is usually the most tense and difficult conversation you're going to have in a divorce setting. And the reason for that is it's the area of the law that is the least clear. Parenting, we've got a test for that. Child support, no negotiations. It's laid out, black and white. Spousal support, we have a test to determine if you are entitled to spousal support. What we don't have is laws with respect to what that payment looks like. There are ranges that we can look at on a calculator, but there is not a way for me to say, your spouse makes $80,000 a year, you make $20,000 a year, here's the number you're entitled to. There's a lot of nuance that goes into it where we look at budgets between 2 households, we look at the reason for the spousal support payment and the duration of the spousal support payment. Step 1 in determining spousal support is someone entitled to it? And there's really two ways you can be entitled to it. The first way is through compensatory support. Compensatory support is support that looks at what did that party sacrifice in the relationship to benefit the family and benefit the other party's career. So for example, if you left your job as a teacher, as a nurse, as a lawyer, and you said, you know what, I'm going to stay home and I'm going to take care of our 3 children, and you go forth and be a doctor, a dentist, a teacher, whatever that looks like, and their career trajectory goes fast and forward, while yours does not progress because you are contributing to the household in a different way, you have a claim to compensatory spousal support. The other way that we can look at spousal support is a non-compensatory claim. And maybe you both worked throughout the marriage, but one party made $300,000 and one party makes $45,000. The sheer differential in the incomes entitles the lower income earner to receive a monthly payment for spousal support, because no one expects a party to leave a relationship where the overall household income was $350,000 and go to living only on their income. And so the courts will look at the income pre-separation, and they will try to equalize that post-separation. The things that the court will consider when looking at the quantum, so the amount and the duration of spousal support, are the financial means of the parties. So what did each party get in a property settlement? That plays into what spousal support will be paid. How long you guys lived together. So a 3-year marriage, you're probably not looking at a lot of spousal support. A 20-year marriage, you're looking at a long duration of spousal support. What the parties did during the relationship. So that goes back to my conversation around, did one party stay home? Did one party work part-time? Did one party put sweat equity into a family business? Those are things that the court will say, yes, that entitles you to support. The goal of self-sufficiency. So this one's really important, and this is very difficult because it's really scary as the recipient of spousal support to have someone say to you, yeah, you're going to get some support, but at one point, you're not going to get that support anymore. And so what steps are you taking to re-enter the workforce or to maintain or build the ability to self-sustain? And that's not going to be an expectation that happens of you in 1 year, 2 years, or 5 years. But it is a goal of the court system to say, okay, so you were married for 5 years. We're going to give you 4 years of spousal support. But after that, you're on your own. So go start looking for a job. Go start retraining. Perhaps part of your spousal support goes towards an educational program that allows you to then re-enter the workforce. And then the care of the children. So this is especially important when it comes to children with special or high needs. So if that is a situation that a party or that parents are in, then the duration and the quantum of spousal support will probably go up. So what about a will? So can I change my will before separation or divorce? Yes, absolutely, please do it. The first thing I say to people when I'm in their introductory meetings with me is, do you have a will? When was it drafted? And do you have someone that can help you redraft it now? Because if you die during this process, one, you are leaving your children and potentially your family in a very difficult situation. And two, if something happens to you, if you're leaving him, you probably don't want him getting half your stuff or all of your stuff. So it is extremely important to have a will done once you start thinking about separation or divorce. What does that one say? My eyesight's terrible.
What is worth addressing in the will and or what details are dictated by the law?
So from a divorce division of property perspective, there's nothing that is dictated by the law. You can leave your estate to whoever you want. However, if you have dependent children, the courts can step behind whatever will you left to make sure those children are supported. The other piece of that is if you hold property jointly with your spouse. And so the big example is your house. You are registered as joint tenants on your property. If you pass away during a divorce process and you have not registered a certificate of pending litigation on your property, they will just automatically receive that property once you die, and it'll pass outside of your estate. So it is important to talk to your lawyer about how you hold your house and what the title of your house looks like in that first meeting. And I can tell you right now, 98% of people who walk into my office and I say, how are you registered on title to your property? look at me like I'm asking the craziest question ever, right? And 50% of the time, they get it wrong. I say, are you on the title of your home? Yes. I pull title, their name's not on it. So that's something you should be thinking about. It costs about $15 to pull the title for your home at Land Titles. It might be something you want to look into doing if you have a question about how is my ownership of my home registered. If you are not on title to your home, you are still entitled to 50% of the value in your home in a divorce setting. What does a lawyer cost? Lawyers are not the least expensive activity in the world. With that said, if you are looking to mitigate and manage costs during this process, it is worth talking to a lawyer at the start of the process, because that is the time where you're most vulnerable. And if you don't gather information and learn about what your responsibilities and rights are within a divorce process at the beginning, it could cost you a whole bunch more money down the road. So it's better to get educated up front and say, okay, thank you so much. I'm going to try to do this on my own, rather than trying to do it on your own and then coming to us on the back end, because we can't undo certain things. But we can start at the beginning and guide you through in some way, shape, or form. There's also a lot of lawyers now in Calgary that are doing sort of small retainers where they are coaching people through divorces. And so they operate in the background. They help people draft legal documents. They give legal advice, but they are not the face of the file. And if you are concerned about legal fees, that is a good option that helps balance protecting your legal rights and minimizing cost. The average cost of a lawyer in Calgary is somewhere between $200 and $800 an hour. And really, that is based on the years of experience that they have. Across the law firms in Calgary, when it comes to family law lawyers, years of call tend to be the same price, because there's just an incremental increase that goes with experience, and you're not going to, it's unlikely that you would walk into one firm and a 5-year lawyer would say, I'm 200, and the next lawyer would say I'm 500. You're probably going to find a 5-year lawyer in the same sort of within $50 per hour. One thing that's really important when it comes to talking to your lawyer about what legal fees look like is asking them, what does an hour of your time look like? Because when we bill in 6-minute increments. So if we have a 6-minute phone call with you, that's called a 0.1. So if your lawyer was $200 an hour, that 6-minute phone call is $20. And so that understanding how lawyers bill is important to understanding how you manage costs. And so one thing I say to my clients is, hey, if you have 10 questions, put them into an email each day. Send me one email that week, because that's way less time that I spend reading one email versus 10 separate emails. So when you are meeting a lawyer for the first time, have a conversation. How do you bill? What is the best way for me to communicate with you? Some clients really struggle with email communication, and so I say, if you have a question, send me the question in an email. Let's book a phone call, because what could be 5 email exchanges could be a 5-minute phone call. And it's really important to talk at the start of that relationship to ensure that you're both managing the expectations when it comes to the cost. Thank you so much.
I think it's really important also when you are choosing your lawyer, and understanding how they work is a critical juncture. You may, and listening to friends and listening to what worked for one person may or may not work for you. And so it's really important to understand that you're not just, when you, like, I was gonna say yellow pages. When you, just like went back to.
You look so great for your age.
I am turning 50 this year. But when you're, Googling lawyers and all of that, it's important. So as a professional who helps people choose lawyers, it's really important to think about what this is going to look like, what your financial picture looks like, what kind of process we actually can anticipate this also looking like, and not listening, whether it's your parenting plan or your lawyer, to your sister's friend's husband's cousin down the road who hired this guy and he was amazing, or she was. It's like, hold on. You need to understand what you're doing and who you're hiring before you take names. Of course, you want recommendations and things like that, but I think it's really important to also take that time and have those calls to understand the person. They're there to advocate for you. They work for you. We work for you. If you are not comfortable with any of these resources, if it's not feeling good, and I find this often with lawyers that I don't work with, like Madison, who I adore, that the clients that I have are feeling shaky about the relationship because the lawyer is not a good fit for them. So just think about that as you're thinking about that process of bringing in that advocate and representative for you and what that looks like.
Mm-hmm. I'll just one moment add to that. Your relationship with your lawyer is most likely going to be a minimum of 2 years. So if you don't love it at the start, I'd make a move.
Yeah.
Like it's not a short-term relationship.
Yeah, and one of the things that I also wanted to talk about too is just if, like, people will call sometimes because they feel a bit stuck because they can't access some of the resources that the marriage has acquired. And so sometimes calling the right lawyer can help you figure out how you might have access to something. There are resources in the workbook as well, and I was going to talk about that, but I'm just going to say it now because it makes a bit of sense that don't hold yourself back in the process because you don't feel like you have the right to access marital funds. And so get permission from somebody to take that next step, because it does hold people back, especially if you have removed yourself from the workforce or reduced how much time you spent working and your income isn't high. So I don't like it. It just drags it out for you, and it stops you from making progress, and that will erode all the pieces, your confidence, everything, right? So, yeah. So I'm Crystal, and for those of you who don't know me, and I'm a financial advisor, and I've been an advisor for 18 years now. So I'm dating myself.
Okay, I'm looking through the yellow pages right now.
It's totally fine. It's okay. It's totally fine. I remember those days. But I'm really passionate about helping people, especially women, get through this process because my career started as a new mother who was also getting divorced. So I took on new motherhood and getting divorced all in a couple of years period. I had incredible support, but I also had no idea about divorce coaching. I don't even know if it was a thing back in 2008. I don't know if that was a thing, but I struggled to find a lawyer. I actually got really great advice from a lawyer, but I had to get some support to get that lawyer and some encouragement. And then along the process for me, my mom actually, who's here today, thank you, Mom, for loving me this much. She said, you're not okay. Like, something's off. I don't know what it is, but you need to get some counseling. And she was right. She was completely right. I was completely mentally in a fog, and I couldn't pull myself out. So, and when you're operating from that place, you aren't making good decisions about many areas of your life. It's hard to parent if you have young children. It's hard to do anything for yourself, and it becomes obvious to those around you. And so if you have those people in your life that you trust, ask them to be really honest with you. And not everybody should be that person in your life, but I also have a funny title, so if you have questions about that, you can ask me. The role of an advisor in the process, it's tricky. People call me at different stages, but number one, you should have a really good relationship with your financial advisor. So that should be somebody that you feel really safe talking to, that you can share everything with. We don't want to be the psychologist or the legal head or the coach, but we do want to know who you are because it really does matter. What you do in your financial life should really align with all of the things that matter to you. So we don't want to just pin you into what we think a plan should be for you and set you on your way, because that may not align with you and bring you happiness. So if you can't have lunch or maybe play a round of golf if you're into that with your advisor, it's not really, I don't golf, sorry. It's not my thing. But if you want to play tennis, I'm here. I'm bad at it, but I'm here. So, but you should be able to hang out with them outside of your financial life. And if that's not somebody that you can do that with, then maybe shop, like what Madison said. Like you're in a long-term relationship with professionals, so make sure that you like them. When you have a good relationship with your financial advisor, you're probably going to be taking their advice. And yes, this week I was sitting with somebody, and we've been working together for 4 years, post-divorce. So she came into my life post-divorce, which is fine, and really just exhausted by the process. financially exhausted, mentally exhausted, completely exhausted. And when we were reviewing her plan, I was like, look at this. Like, you're about to pay off your house in the new year. Like, you are on track to retire at the date that you said mattered the most to you. And you're not there yet, but you are on track. If you keep doing what you're doing, and we're doing 4 meetings a year, and you're actually doing the things that you say you're going to do, and you're like sacrificing in areas that you've said you're okay sacrificing to get there, and you're measuring this progress, like, this is incredible. This is like the best story of my life, because you're actually just like putting one foot in front of the other. You have a psychologist, you got a lawyer and dealt with your stuff before I knew you, and now we're putting all these pieces into place, and it's really exciting to see that. She is super organized, and we talk about it all the time. So I think it's really exciting. Privacy, I kind of alluded to it earlier today. We're really private. So sometimes we have couples that are clients, and they will separate or divorce. Sometimes they will both remain clients, and we have ways of safeguarding each other's information. Sometimes they'll work with a different advisor here. Sometimes I can work with both of them. It really depends on the situation. But if you ever have privacy concerns with the people you're working with, just ask the questions, because it's our responsibility as professionals to hold your information private and to not share that with other people. Again, you should feel safe with us. You should have increased clarity. So every time you meet with your advisor, you should understand what's going on in your money. You should understand the steps that you're going to take after you finish that meeting, and you should understand when you're going to meet with them again and what that's going to do for you in the future. And then the values. So Sam is here. Where is she? Oh, there you are. Hi. So Sam's here. She is very passionate about this and very good at it, and I'm learning to be better about it. But helping people identify their values in their process. Like, what are the things in your life, not dollar-wise, but what are the things that really matter to you? And how does your money reflect getting those things for you? Because we could set a target for your investment returns, like you want 8%, wonderful, we hit that all day long. But if you're not doing any of the things that matter to you, you're probably not going to be happier. So there's a really fine line to be measuring, like, what's important, are you able to achieve those things, and is your plan going to do what you want it to do? What else? Oh, and these are the 6 pillars. They're so cute. Okay, the first one everyone really hates, and we don't use the B word, debt and cash flow planning. So often when people are either starting or halfway through their process of separation or divorce, they may not know what it costs to live their life. That's a common thing for one or both parties. People do money differently in their households. One person can manage the money, they can try to do it together, they can each do it individually, but often there is some sort of foundation that needs to be put down that says, what does it cost to live the lifestyle we're currently living, and what will it cost to live the lifestyle I want to live during this process and once it's over? So we really need to understand that, and where is all the money going to come from to achieve those things and to make you feel safe? Are those reliable sources? And that's when we get into risk management. So if those sources are reliable, how much control do you have over them? If you are sick or injured, or if you cannot work, are you still able to pay those bills? If you're relying on support payments because you've had really great advice and you have really good support, what are the risks to those support payments? Job loss risk, any kind of premature death, disability, critical illness. Like, if one of those things happens to the other person, are you going to have to change your lifestyle again, or are you going to live a lifestyle that doesn't rely on those payments? Those are choices you get to make. Tax efficiency. Often not the biggest focus during the process, but your advisor should be keeping an eye on that for you, because it can really help you have access to more money along the way or later. And then planning, having your plan written out. So knowing exactly the steps you're taking when you have that meeting with your advisor. Are you saving money right now? Are you putting certain things on hold? Are you taking some money out? Or do you need to make an adjustment? Learning about your investments. So we put learning here, which I really appreciate, because often your investment philosophy may change during the process or after the process. Maybe you aren't the person who's making the decisions in your household. And there were some stats playing at the beginning. I don't know if anybody was reading them, but CIBC did a poll, and only 41% of women actually make investment decisions. That's really low and really a little bit disheartening, because I really think that women make smart decisions when they feel confident and when they feel safe. And they do really well with their investments because they make smart decisions. And so I really hope that that number increases over the next few years, because it's your turn. Like, you get to do this. If you are leaving your marriage or you've left your marriage or your relationship and you want to invest money but you're afraid, learning to take those baby steps. So do something a little bit safe, see a little bit of growth, start absorbing some more information, and just taking baby steps. You don't have to put a ton of pressure on yourself to change everything overnight, but taking the steps to make sure that you're constantly paying attention, learning, and growing your money for you and for your future. And then your estate plan. So Madison talked about the will. We don't want people dying without a will. We don't want people dying with a will that says the wrong thing. It's really difficult to help a family through that process. And we're going to talk a bit about that tonight. I'm a little bit emotional about it, actually. But we're going to talk about it because it's important. And you don't get to control the other person in your life, but you can influence. And so you can make decisions that are for you and in your best interest and in the best interest of maybe any minor children or your family. And you can influence the other party in your life by saying, like, hey, I'm taking these steps because I think it matters. I think it reflects how I care about others. Maybe you should consider that. I don't think you can make a will a part of your divorce agreement, can you? You can do life insurance. You can do that. We recommend
try,
that.
but there's no control over it.
Yeah, it's really
People
tough
can
in
change
that.
their will at any time.
So before you go through the process, if you haven't started the process, getting that really strong lifestyle analysis, understanding what your lifestyle is, what it costs, if you're going to be making changes to that, having a realistic spending plan, having your estate plan, and reviewing your insurance, because you may want to be changing beneficiaries or changing the type of insurance or the amounts of insurance that you have, and understanding all of your options that are starting to be presented to you, hopefully, by your other professionals. During the separation and divorce, making lifestyle adjustments sometimes need to happen because now you may have some coaching, counseling, legal fees happening. You may need to adjust where your money is flowing. Having financial strategies during your litigation. So where's the money going to come from for you to get through this process so that it's not being held back by your lack of ability to feel like you can spend the money that you need to spend to get to your goal. Understanding lump sum and installment plan payments. So those are something that happen usually with spousal support. So you may be presented with an offer for a buyout of what you may be entitled to for spousal support. And understanding if that is to your benefit is really important, and where those resources are coming from. Because I actually had one recently. It was, he's going to give me a bunch of RSPs, so it's fine. Oh well, it's not. And I sent it back to the lawyer, and we still haven't heard back. So it's okay though. But there's just the tax implication can really erode what you might be getting. So are you getting something that's fair? Are you getting something that's going to do what you need it to do? Lump sums can be really great, I think, because they can provide you that certainty. Once it's done, I think it's technically done. If the person loses their job 2 years in the future, I don't think you're at risk anymore. So I haven't seen any come back yet like that, but I'm sure there could be an argument, but I don't think
it's
so.
done.
It's just done.
It's done. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the risk each party takes.
So it can be worth it if you're worried about that. Also, you can use that to grow the money, and that can pay off, but you need to apply it into your plan in both forms and see how it will affect you. And then protect those payments and income. So writing things into the agreement that the person will have life insurance, stating who will be the beneficiaries of that life insurance and what the amount of that life insurance needs to be. Also, I like disability a lot. It's really important. If the person cannot work, do they have disability coverage through their work? If they don't, I don't know if you can really write it into the agreement, probably can, but they can probably get their own policy through a professional. So if that would help, I really encourage people to do that, and the will part. So, and then all the referrals, and you get to take charge now. So, and this is the stat that only 22% of married women say that they make the investment decisions for their household, and only 41% control all their money. So it's still very low, and that's from 2019. So I hope it's higher now. After your divorce, you know your numbers fine. You know them all, so you know exactly what you're getting if there's any minor children. You know what you might be getting for spousal. You know how the property is divided and where you're going to be living, and now we can really set your foundational plan in place. This is what you're doing, and this is exactly where I started with that other person that I was telling you about. So she knew all of the things. We set up her plan. We said, this is what you're going to do. We are going to assume that you're only going to get a low rate of return on your investments because that's only going to help you move forward, and then every year we're going to update it fully, but each quarter we're going to talk about it. Debt repayment, savings, emergency funds. Often I will see people maxing out RSPs or RESPs and they don't have an emergency fund, so we might make a change there depending. Investing, learning how to do that, taking charge, being really confident. And you get to make new goals now. So your progress doesn't have to be linear. So sometimes, because of the expense of actually taking these steps, you may feel like you've gone a little bit backwards, but that's okay. We're going to start a new starting point, and you're going to make those goals, and you're going to start tracking things, and you will feel better the more that you do that. The more that you get really comfy with how much you have saved, maybe how much you owe, how much your whole net worth might be, tracking all of those things in one place can sometimes help you take those steps to maybe go a little bit backwards to get what you need to actually have the life that you really want to have. And then preparing for this, so we kind of talked about this, but like the disclosure piece can often be really intimidating. So that's where you have to gather all of the financial information that you have available to you. We can help with that. It's a long list. These are just like some of the examples: credit, bank policies, like insurance policies, bank statements, credit cards, pensions, all of these things. Sometimes we don't look at them very regularly, but they all become really familiar to you during this process for a little bit. And then this is the checklist. I'm going to move out of the way. I think, yeah. So this is a QR code. If you want to scan it, these are all of the things in the divorce. And one of the questions that we had when we were like, oh, we're getting some people who are returning this year, which is really nice, is where are they stuck in the process, if they are? I mean, the process is not a quick process. So sharing like anonymously, but knowing that the areas that might be holding you back, and then maybe making a conscious decision today to be like, okay, some of these I can tackle. I can tackle this one next week. Maybe I can tackle this one before Christmas. I want to have this one done before the end of winter. And just having some steps that you can take, some really like palatable steps that you can take to actually move yourself forward and that you can actually celebrate for yourself. So knowing your credit score, that's an easy one. That's important. You might have to change your house situation. Even at rentals right now, they're looking at credit scores. So knowing your credit score, how do you check it for free? Someone can help you do that. Knowing your net worth. So the biggest one is struggling with the first step or the next step. And so that is probably one of the hardest steps, I would assume, for people to make that decision. I don't know if anyone wants to chime in, but like the first step or the next step. The first step, probably the hardest thing you're going to have to do. There's so many things that you're going to have to ask yourself. The next step, I hope you've identified what that is. And if you haven't and one of us can help you, then please don't be shy. And then the third one down was understanding my new financial picture. So understanding a new financial picture, I actually was asked to do a national talk on money and divorce with one of the insurance carriers last year after our event. And I received a phone call from Vancouver, and it was a person who asked me to run through her lifestyle if she stays in her marriage and run through her financial picture if she leaves her marriage. And we were able to illustrate, assuming that it was like 50-50, debt, assets, pensions, CPP, and she kind of knew all the numbers because she was the money person in the household, which was really lucky for her. She has not left her marriage yet because for her, she felt more financially comfortable staying, but she wanted to know. And that might evolve for her, but that's exactly what we did. And it was literally an hour on the phone together, and it was pretty quick and easy to do. And then access to money is the next one down. So access to money is something that is really tricky, and especially if there's contentious behaviors in the marriage. I did not have access to any of my marital money when I got divorced. And I was so lucky that my family cared enough about me and was able to help me. I probably still owe them money. We all lost track. It was a trying time. So I'll give you some more. No, I mean, yeah, it's really tough. There are some places now that are actually helping people achieve lending, I've learned. It really depends. you do need to know what the assets of the marriage are to start down that road if you can't get help in that way. I know that legal aid had some problems this year. They almost shut down, and I was really concerned, especially in this area of the law, because it will prevent people from accessing legal advice. So if you are stuck financially, just talk to somebody about that. I will happily take your call and see if there's anybody or any way that I could point you in that realm to help you move forward. But yeah, it's a big list, and I hope maybe after this there'll be some progress. I was hoping to celebrate a new divorce tonight, but she's not here. It was 20 years in the making. He asked her what the rush was. Securing a financial advisor. Don't discredit yourself. You all deserve financial advice. And if you have been turned away because you don't have enough assets to manage, that's just the wrong advisor for you. I've purposely designed our individual programs based on participation and collaboration and your willingness to actually jump into the process. So it's not a number for us. And we have different ways of paying for that advice here. So don't be shy. You are the person that is paying all of these professionals up here. You get to ask that question. How do I pay you? What if I can't afford you? We can either decide to help you, or we can decide to give you some direction on where to go next. It's, you don't have to preclude yourself from advice. I really think that is one of my biggest pet peeves. And this is why I care so much, because women who work with an advisor during the process are often happier, like more than double. They're happier with their settlement because they likely understood it. They were able to understand that they had choice. And if they needed to, they could have gone back, like the person that I sent back to the lawyer and said, just ask them about this piece because of the tax consequences. And so now she's working on it and she's working through it. So it's great. Oh man, I don't know. Oh yes. How do you pay? There's often no direct cost depending on how you set it up. Some people do pay us annually, some people pay us hourly, and some people will just pay for a plan. So some people will just pay for a quick analysis. Don't be shy. If you want something really specific, just ask and we'll try to make it work for you. We do have these 3 programs that are kind of referenced here: Preparing, Confident, and Abundant. These are all the programs that we offer. Preparing is like you're just getting started in your daily life. You don't need to have like 8 meetings a year with us. It's pretty quick, straightforward, not very expensive. Confident is we're gonna have more meetings. You're starting to actually accumulate assets. You might be paying down bigger debts. And abundant is you're gonna probably hit your retirement goals and have excess left when you pass away. What do we do with all of those pieces?
All right, so for the second half of the evening, Brianna's gonna press play in a moment for the video, and then we'll watch that. We'll get some commentary from each of the presenters, just from their perspective about what happened, what could have been done differently, what was done well, just anything that might actually add value for you guys from learning from an actual situation that happened. And then once we've done that, Cheryl's going to step in with some coping strategies, parenting strategies, all of those things for kind of like how to take care of yourself.
The decision to separate was mostly mine. This was back in, I believe, July of 2020. It's hard to not go into specifics and get the gravity across. Like, this was not just a flippant, like, oh, I'm just not happy for the last, couple of months, so I just made this life-altering decision. We actually bought a travel trailer and tried to go out and camp with our kids and tried to make things work that way. And unfortunately, it was clear that it was not gonna work. It's like a switch flipped. I can remember the exact moment and exactly where I was sitting and exactly what I was saying. And I was just like, you know what? I can't. Both of us agreed to try to not involve lawyers, not involve legal fees, not draw this out. Our intention was both to be very amicable. It's really hard to wrap your head around the life that you built and that you were building for so long. And then to have to be the one to decide that that's not what you're gonna do. And you're actually gonna pivot and go a whole different way. It's terrifying. You have to just ride the roller coaster. There's no other way around it. The cost of the lawyer was a big consideration on why I pivoted and went to mediation. However, I wish I had brought that mediation to a lawyer for review before submitting them to the courts. But yes, I do wish I would have shelled out a little extra and gotten that legal advice. When he passed, he didn't have a will. And that automatically meant that the kids were the beneficiaries of that estate. It just was who was going to administer that. During mediation, we came to an agreement fairly quickly that I was to stay in the home. It was important to both of us that our kids stay in their beds, in their schools, in their sports teams, and they kept their life as similar as possible. Everything would stay as is, as who was on title, as all of that stayed the same, and that we wrote it in that I was to pay all of the expenses and the mortgage. And I had up until the mortgage renewal to either get a mortgage in my name, as I was fresh in the workforce, as a single parent, as a woman. By the time the mortgage renewal came, we would sell the home. And that was the agreement that was written up in our mediation. The struggles came in regard to the mortgage. It was recommended to me that in order to protect the one main asset was that I had a certificate on that asset to make sure that if any company, any creditor, any lender came looking at that asset, that it was tied up in legal proceedings and that they couldn't move forward, they couldn't touch it, that it was protected. So filed, got that certificate, everything felt like it was that I was protected so that we could move forward. Once he passed and I realized that I was not next of kin and that he didn't have a will and that my children, who are under the age of 18, were the sole beneficiaries, it then became a question of what happens to that asset. And then not having my name on that asset meant I had no control. And then no control meant I needed to get a lawyer. I needed to pay those legal fees that I probably should have just from the start, or at least do the mediation, have a lawyer look at everything just to make sure, like, oh, hey, maybe you didn't consider this. He died so quickly after the divorce was final that I don't even think if we went that way, it would have had time. Just this whole situation has just kind of been a whirlwind of just putting out fires. My counselor is somebody who's been a big support for me. When I was mulling the separation, mulling the divorce, she was somebody that I confided in fully. She's somebody who's been an amazing sounding board for me to be able to work through how I feel so that I can accept it and I can get through it. Not to say that it made any of it easier, but it made me more confident in my decisions to be able to work on that mental health aspect. My lawyer took the guesswork out of it. The process is, unless you go through it, you have no idea what to expect, what to prepare for, what to consider. And being able to sit there in his office and go through everything, it takes the guesswork out of it. My financial advisor was probably the biggest support through this. Not knowing a lawyer personally, there was she got a referral for this lawyer. There was referrals in that industry of people that we could use and that were vouched for. Understanding the ramifications of getting a mortgage, how the process of the Office of the Public Trustee, the process of, I didn't even realize that my kids would be the sole beneficiary if somebody died without a will. That was something I had no clue about. I had next of kin, I didn't understand it. Administrator of an estate, I didn't know what that meant either. So my financial advisor walked me through that, helped me understand it. It was, something where I'm sitting there and we're talking about all of these different terms, and then I just cry my eyes out. So it was somebody that I've had a relationship with and that I trust to kind of lead me through this. The part that I'm most proud of is that I was able to keep my kids in their home and in their schools and with their friends. And although a big part of their life had changed, there was a big part of it that stayed consistent and normal and safe for them. Well, I'm still trying to sort this out. I'm still kind of waiting on the legal system to do its magic. And I've been on a really good path since my divorce. I started on a really good path kind of since everything was final, and I'm just gonna carry on. My kids are happy. They're doing okay. And that's all that matters.
It's pretty short. For Larissa, this is obviously like an example of worst case scenario, but when it happens to somebody that you actually know and care about and you couldn't stop it, but we could help through it, it's impactful. I think there was definitely some leading up into making the decisions and some of the roller coaster that Heidi could have helped with, or somebody in that capacity as a coach. And then there was some legal advice so I will pass it over to you to say where you think that you could help in a situation where you're trying to make the decisions and go through that process. And then if something like that were to happen to somebody.
Yeah. I offer a 15-minute consult, and it's always critical to reach out and just get some education and get some questions answered and get an understanding of really where you're at. And coming off even that 15-minute consult or some time with me, that next step will be the right step for you, because again, there's no manual coming out of the sky as to how you do this, and there's a lot of noise of people telling you the right way to do it for you, likely your spouse or soon-to-be ex or ex telling you that it should be done this way. You need to educate yourself so you feel confident. You said confident so many times in your presentation, and that's really what it is all about. Knowledge is power. I was next to a shell of myself going through it and walking into a lawyer's office for the first time, and in the unknown abyss, there's support out there. So make sure you take advantage and ask questions. Knowledge is power.
I think adding on that, when you are going through this process, a lot of people have one thing that they're focusing on, and you have blinders. You have emotional blinders. And sometimes walking into my office without having the opportunity to talk to someone like Heidi in advance is you don't know all the questions to ask. And I do my very best, as I'm sure every family law lawyer does, to ask all the questions. But sometimes we don't know what we don't know. Mm-hmm. And, I'll do a 1 to 2 hour intake with someone, and then at the end they'll mention something, and it's like, whoa, hold on. We've got to go all the way back to the start. Touching on this story a little bit, I think from a legal perspective, the lessons that you can take away are, if you're going to do a mediation process on your own, talk to a lawyer before you go into it. Pay for that hour or two of legal advice before you step into the mediator's office, because it will give you knowledge that is so valuable to the negotiation process. And mediators cannot give legal advice. And often when people are going to mediators without legal support, they're going to mediators that are not lawyers. And that can help you solve a problem, but it might not help you solve the problem in a way that protects you in the future. And one thing that, I always recommend to my clients is if there is child support payable, if there is spousal support payable, something that you want to be negotiating is life insurance on the payor's life. And that can be done in two ways. One, you owe child support, so I want you to make sure you have life insurance in this amount. So if something happens to you, the children are protected financially. If they won't agree to that, there's another solution. And I am yet to encounter a file where this does not work, which is allow that spouse to, or have that spouse say, you can take a life insurance policy out on me. So you're responsible for paying those premiums and getting that policy in place, but then you are also protecting your children. So there are two options. If they won't pay for that policy, put your hand up and say, I'll pay for it, I just need you to agree to it.
It doesn't have to be expensive. If they're insurable, hopefully they are in those cases, but it doesn't have to be an expensive policy. I actually carried one on my ex until my son was 17. And then I was like, okay, we're done like anything that would have paid. So I let it go with the knowledge that my son is now working and I'm good. I can handle it. This story, I really tried not to provide context in what was shared in that story. I was involved for a lot of the discussions leading into the divorce. And I don't think it's easy to look back and regret a choice. I don't know a single person that has gone through this process and felt completely like they did everything perfectly. But I do hear a lot of shame and I do hear a lot of regret. And I really hope that you can forgive yourself. If you slip up and get too mad at the children or yell or say the wrong thing about your ex or something, or you feel like you forgot to take a step or involve a professional, I just hope you can forgive yourself, because it's not about being perfect.
It's about being human.
Yeah. And most things can be fixed or solved.
Yeah. Even when they get messy.
Yeah. There's usually a solution.
Yeah.
We're good with the messy.
Good segue.
Yeah, good segue.
I was really struck the first time I saw that video, and I actually watched it earlier today, about how mental health still has a stigma. Despite our Bell Let's Talk days and all of those wonderful things that we have, people still don't like to admit that they seek help from a psychologist or a counselor or a social worker. Finding that person who can help you is so important. And I think it was you, Heidi, who talked about that fit. The stat that I do a lot of teaching, and the stat I almost always talk to the people who come into my office for supervision or that is the biggest predictor of successful therapeutic relationships is that you actually like your counselor, that you can work with them, that you feel respected and they respect you. It's not, are they doing cognitive behavioral therapy? Are they doing play therapy? Are they doing this? Are they doing that? It's that you feel that it is a relationship that is going to move you forward, that you can come, you can cry. And, it's important that you find someone. And I think that Larissa needs to be commended for recognizing that was an important step. And, accessing psychological support, clinical support, any of that through the public health system is hard. There have limits on it. And I recognize that the private systems is sometimes very daunting. And choosing your own mental health is going to make you a better parent. And so it's not always about, I need to do this for my kids. Your kids, they do need support, but there are lots of places we can get them support. Sometimes it's you finding that person that you can talk with and getting those boundaries it is important.
Putting your own mask on first,
Yeah.
an airplane.
Yes, that one right there.
And that's, I think, does anybody have anything they want to add? I think we're okay. Thanks for,
So I guess that is
it's you. And
Are
then
we
it's
switching?
down. Yes, I will let
It's
you go over
down.
that if you
Okay.
want.
Yeah.
I think that'll be easier.
So I'm actually a child psychologist. Okay, so I specialize in anxiety disorders, mood disorders. I actually, I call it the weird and the wonderful. If you pull all your hair out, if you have Tourette's, I'm your girl. If you're under the age of 18. Not your girl if you're over the age of 18. But I work in a really lovely private practice where we treat across the lifespan. And I spend some time talking with my colleagues, and I work with parents because the little ones I see always come in with a parent attached to them, right? So I know some of the things that have to happen in terms of being a parent and doing this and working through it. I have 3 children. If someone told me that parenting was as hard as it is, I'm not so sure I would have had 3 children. I'm like, what was I thinking? At some point I thought I was gonna have 4 or 5. That was quickly squashed. So, yeah. Oh, did I go up or did I go down? So, we're gonna talk a little bit about self-care. Because we, again, the put your own mask on first. If we don't do that, we cannot parent. Some parenting tips and then a couple of resources for you. You have to take care of yourself, right? You cannot move forward. You cannot heal. You have to practice some of that forgiveness. You have to be able to do those sorts of things. And there's kind of 7 things that I would like to highlight. So number 1. The importance of a schedule. I know it's hard, but finding a schedule that works for you and your ex is important. Keeping your kids aware of that schedule. I am a big fan of calendars, and parents are always like, oh, no, we just use the calendars on our phone. I'm like, your kid shouldn't have a device, so they need an actual visual calendar. And if you need to color code, mommy's house is this color, daddy's house or ex-spouse's house is this color, put it on. They need to know where they're going and who they're going with. And that actually allows you then to have your schedule and put things on the schedule. Say you're going to the gym or you're going to have dinner with a girlfriend or you're, doing these things. Those things need to be on the calendar because by setting that schedule, you're showing your kids that you matter just as much as anybody else does. Seek support, right? Get your divorce coach, have a good lawyer, have a financial planner. I was listening to Crystal speak and I'm like, oh, I'm doing a really bad job on that front. I'm like, I got the email from my financial advisor today telling me all about my Q3 and the first thing I did was forwarded it to my husband and then I just archived it in the thing. I didn't even read it. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so bad. Right?
It's not bad. No shame. There's no shame.
No shame.
It's bad.
But we can help you get more comfortable with that email that you're going to get.
That's called delegation by
yeah.
the boss.
Oh, yeah. Still think I probably should have read it. But get that support, right? We really, really need that. Hobbies and interests, right? When we have children, we have a tendency to make our hobbies and interests, they just disappear. And then all of a sudden, we now have time because our children are maybe 50% of the time they're somewhere else. We need to make sure that we have those. You need to find out what they are, and you can try different things. And you don't have to be perfect at it. I heard Crystal say she likes to play tennis even though she's not good at it, right? It's doing something that's fun for you. Setting boundaries for you and your ex. You are allowed to say, I would prefer to communicate in a different way than this. I don't want you to have a key to my house, right? You are allowed to do that. You might need help to be able to figure it out, but you are allowed to set those boundaries. you do have to also understand that you will have to relinquish control. You probably didn't parent the same way when you lived together. That division or divide is going to get bigger when they have their house and you have your house, right? So, there are some things that we can get, like the importance of reasonable bedtimes, what times they're coming up. We can use some of those things, but there are going to be things that you cannot control. How many times you go through the McDonald's drive-thru is not something you can control. Whether or not they have pop in their house and you don't is not something you can control, right? Maintain your values and live from integrity. Identifying those values, figuring out what is important to you, right? And I do this exercise even myself. I always say that one of my very first value is I want to be a really great mom. But that doesn't mean that I do everything for my children. It means that I do spend my 30 minutes 4 or 5 times a week on my Peloton. It means I say to them, Mommy needs to read her book right now. Off you go. Right? There's nothing wrong with that. But you also need to live from integrity. You have to recognize that your ex-spouse probably doesn't have the same values, because you'd probably still be together if you had the same values, right? Allow them to have their choices and respect them. Okay, some parenting tips. I probably spoke to some of these already, which is good because your child's emotional and psychological needs are at the forefront, right? They will struggle with change. It is the hardest thing we ever ask our kids to do, right? You need to move from this house to go to this house. And the unicorn may or may not go with you, right? How do you do that? Calendar, which we talked about. The compassion and co-parenting is collaboration. It's not a competition. Mm-hmm. Things that you can do. So here are some of those apps I was telling you about. Our Family Wizard, Talking Parents, Two Houses, Cozy Family Organizer. They are great apps if you need to communicate. It also helps prevent those nastograms that you can get, because they can be monitored if they need to be monitored. You will need to figure out about how you're going to handle unexpected but common occurrences. What do you do if your kid is barfing and you're supposed to be dropping them off at daddy's house, right? What are you supposed to do when there's a bake sale and your kids are calling you, but they're at dad's house that week, right? You have to be able to look at some of those things. Routines. We know that kids do really well with routines and clear expectations, and they do better with stability. Having as consistent a routine as you can at both households. The times that they come, the times that they go, when they can call, what you can do. They need to understand those things, because otherwise they don't know what to do, right? They don't do well in living without knowing what's happening, right? Extracurriculars. Since I deal mostly with children, the number of times I get kids say, well, I don't understand why mommy and daddy just can't sit and watch my hockey game together. And I'm like, oh, honey, we can't even be in my office together. So you need to have those conversations with them. You need to be able to say, if it's not your week, are you allowed to go? What do you want to do? What do you want to do if your child has one vocal performance a year and it doesn't fall on your week? If you haven't previously addressed those questions, depending on how amicable you are, you may not get the answer that you want. So have your values. Be it like, ask the questions, because that's going to help you. And don't forget to get your kids' input. A lot of the times, they have thoughts and feelings about what they want to do. They're like, you know what? The most important thing that travels back and forth with me is this pair of boots. And you're like, all right, boots, it is, right? And other times, they have a whole list of what they want to travel back and forth, right? Talk to your kids. at an age-appropriate level about what they would like, right? Maybe they don't actually want you going to the games, right? My kids don't like me going to the hockey games because I turn into one of those hockey moms that like bangs on the thing. So they would be like, yeah, you don't have to come. Okay. Avoid negative talk about your ex. I know it can be hard. Speak positively or neutrally about your ex in front of your child. That's why we have friends. That's why we have divorce coaches. That's why we have lawyers and financial advisors, so we can vent to them. Your kids don't need to know that you don't like each other. Encourage your child's relationship with the other parent, right? They want to have relationships with both parents, right? In most circumstances, I'm being high level here, right? But like I'm thinking of a family that I see where sometimes one of the kids will come into my office and they'll start talking about how their daddy has this diagnosis and this diagnosis and this diagnosis, and I'm like, who told you this? And the parents are like telling the kids that. I'm like, that is not helpful, and especially when the fact is that there's actually never been those diagnoses, right? So support and encourage your child's relationship with the other parent. It's important for them to maintain strong, positive connections with both sides of their families, even though it's hard. So boundaries, these are some of the things. So parenting rules, financial responsibilities, personal space. Respect each other's boundaries to reduce conflicts and confusion. Make sure you have clear boundaries with your child and children as well. Right? So what is it that's reasonable? I know that sometimes because of the financial struggles and things like that, but often, you know, I hear stories where parents are like, well, my 10-year-old, I only have one bedroom, so my 10-year-old sleeps with me. You need to have conversations about some of those things because it can lead to a whole bunch of problems when those boundaries, when you haven't set those boundaries around what is reasonable and what isn't. How can you work through some of those things? Be flexible and adapt. It is unpredictable, right? Things come up, there are changing circumstances. You need to be able to kind of react, but not overreact. The custody and access agreements, they're fixed and they're expensive to revisit. I get asked all the time, would you write a letter to say this? No, I will not write a letter to say that because it doesn't matter if I write a letter. It has no legal bearing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So unless I've been asked specifically by a lawyer to come and give an opinion or talk about something, but my letters don't mean anything. In fact, all they do is make the other parent who doesn't like the letter call the college on me so I can not work anymore. Yeah.
They also can't be used as evidence. So it would not be something we could put before a court. So they're not, you know.
Yeah. And those words like voice of the child and things like that, if someone tells you they can write a voice of a child by like spending a couple of hours with your child, no, a voice of a child is something that is done by the court. Mm-hmm. And if any professional, like a clinician says, oh, I can write a voice of a child, I can say what the needs of your child are, they've spoken to me about it, I'll do this. They cannot. That is not somebody who knows what they're talking about, right? This was something that Heidi and I, or no, maybe it was Larissa and I were talking about it. Psychological services, whether it's when it's for your child, are not considered primary care. Primary care is your child is suicidal, they've knocked out their front teeth, they have pink eye, getting a psychological assessment, a psychoeducational assessment, treatment for an anxiety disorder, or even just seeing someone because divorce is hard on children is not primary care. So if you have a custody and access thing that says you have primary care and decision making, that does not mean your ex-spouse does not have to have consent. We have to get consent from both parents. we have to do the best we can. If they live in a different country, if they're not responding to emails, then we can have a case to say they are unresponsive. We've tried calling, we've tried emailing, they are not answering. And then we can usually make a case to see your child. But most of the time, we need both of your consents.
And if they won't give consent, the court loves counseling.
Yes,
So
they do. There's the other one, yeah.
your kids will get that service
Yeah.
if you go to court on that issue.
Yeah. And they will absolutely. Like I see it all the time. Dad's consent has been revoked or mom's consent has been revoked for psychological services. You only need this parent's consent. I don't like it when they name the counselor in the court order because that makes it more challenging in case something happens, right? Like I go away for 6 weeks every summer. You don't want to have my name in your court order. And I think that's kind of what, seek professional help. I'm kind of like, we're going over the same thing and I know, okay, most of us charge around $2.40 an hour. Some of us are a little bit less, some of us are a little bit more. Make sure you go to somebody who has experience. We have a lot of what we call provisional counselors and provisional psychologists. I actually sometimes think that they're better than someone who's been doing this for over 25 years because they're really up on everything. I supervise a lot, so I have to stay up on stuff. But a lot of people who've been doing the job for day in and day out, unlike a lawyer who we get a little bit complacent. So if they say they're provisional, but they know how to work with children, or that is not a bad thing. So, and I really need an updated picture. I look really young there. Okay. These are some really great resources. So this is us, the Women's Centre of Calgary, YW of Calgary, Families Matter, and Calgary Counseling. Most of the ones on the bottom are fee for service, but they are sliding scale, which can be very helpful.